Two of my all-time favorite retired athletes are George Foreman and Shaquille O'Neal. You can't really compare the two of them because you have different eras. You have George Foreman is a boxer and mainly in the 70s. Shaquille O'Neal, an NBA center in the 90s and 2000s. But both of them are pitchmen for Smokeless grills, and you can compare those. So today I've got these, which I paid 90 bucks a piece for, exact same price range. I got them both at Target. In fact, they were right next to each other at Target. So today it's a multi-round head-to-head competition between Big George and Shaq Diesel. Before I even unbox these, what's kind of funny is Shaq's box is even taller. Shaq's 7'1", George is 6'4". Even his box is taller. I also kind of like the Shaq logo where the Q is actually a pan with an egg in it. That's kind of genius. That's a good logo. Something else I'm noticing is that Shaq is on the box here. You see George is nowhere in the box. His face is not on this box. I was kind of surprised about that because George is usually on the boxes. Let me crack these open and compare them out of the box and look at some of the features of both of them. Instruction booklet here, that's good. I got my first George Foreman grill in 1998. I really like that one. The box says up to 85% less smoke with indoor cooking, 3 times faster cooking, removes 50% of the fat, 3 times more durable, dishwasher safe, variable temperature control. I believe there's actually a cheaper model that doesn't have the variable temperature control. Advanced George tough non-stick coating and vertical storage. I like that. All right, let's crack open Superman Shaq here. Big instructions here. Why is it whenever I open something, I always take it out upside down? We got more in there. All right, I'll leave that right. I'm not going to break it on the first use. It says it's a 3-in-1 contact grill, panini press, and open grill. Fits 4 to 6 burgers, up to 450 degree heating, char grill marks and flavor. Smoke extracting fan captures and traps the smoke. Removable grill plates and drip tray. Adjustable temperature control. Timer with auto shutoff. 1-touch digital display. Cool touch handle, dishwasher safe. All right, I'm gonna read these instructions over. I'm gonna figure out how to get this plate off because I don't know how. And then we'll take a closer look and then get started. All right, so I've assembled these, I've cleaned them, I've read over the instructions. Quickly comparing the instructions, the Shaq instructions, got this nice quick start guide. It's a nice big type. It's pretty well laid out. They show you what all the parts are. They talk about the LED display. They have a nice cooking chart here. They even have some recipes. So I'm happy with the Shaq instructions. Good job, Shaq. George, a little bit more minimal. Not bad at all. They have a cooking guide as well. The print's a little smaller and a little bit more faded. They do have a few recipes in here as well. A few tips and tricks. No need to use oil, but really it's only a couple pages and they go to other languages. So as far as the preliminaries go, I think Shaq wins as far as the instructions go. Taking a look at the front panel of the Shaq, you have an on-off button here. This button allows you to turn off the upper plate if you want to have just a lower. The time temperature setting here, and you can turn the fan on or off. The George has rather minimal controls. You just rotate this to turn it off or set your temperature, and that's pretty much it. Just take a look at the grills themselves. The Shaq grill grates are a little bit closer together. Removing the George, there's a button over here on the side. Snaps back into place, same with the bottom. George has a nice big drip tray. So you can see it's down there. Shaq is interesting because the bottom grill just actually, it seems to hover. It's kind of just floating there. Just comes right off. And there's a bottom grease collection tray along here where it drips through that hole into a much smaller drip tray. When I was doing my unboxing, I wasn't sure which direction to push this one, so I had to double check. You push it up and it comes out. It looks like the George Foreman comes into contact. The two grills seem to touch. If not, it's very close. The Shaq does not, because this top grill will be stopped by this handle right here. All right, so for round one, I had the most basic thing that people grill, and that's hamburgers. Now, I did use pre-made patties. I know it's not ideal, but that's to avoid people saying that I didn't make the patties evenly. So let's see how round one looked, Shaq versus Foreman. All right, round one, we're gonna do some burgers. Shaq's takes a little bit longer. I think I'm gonna do these at 425. I've seen different recipes from 4 to 450. We'll split it down the center. See, we want the upper plate on. 4 minutes, I'll try. 425. George, all we have to do is just turn this on. We're gonna go 425. It doesn't go any higher than 425. It's as high as it goes. Shaq is ready. Shaq is ready. And it's still counting even though I haven't put the food on there yet. We gotta hurry. All right, nice sizzle. All right, Shaq is good to go. All right, Shaq is off and running on his fast break. George, usually he comes on strong in the late rounds. Let's see if it's the case with his grill. Here we go for George. All right. All right, George has gone on the run. Now for George, we have to go time it ourselves. Oh, Shaq, I'm gonna put the fan on. A little bit of smoke. Hit the fan. Gone. With George, I don't see any smoke at all. And it doesn't really have a fan. Now with the Shaq, it started counting down the time before I added the food, so I'm gonna have to add about 15 seconds to make it the actual 4 minutes. All right, George's got a tiny bit of smoke coming out of the back. I don't even know if you see that or not. Just a tiny bit. This is Shaq without the fan on. That's not good. With the fan on, not 100%, but it is better. All right, Shaq's done. One thing I noticed, when the Shaq goes off, the fan goes off and it's still smoking. I'm gonna have to go a little bit longer. Let's see how George looks after 4 minutes. Shaq wasn't quite done yet. Oh wow, I think George might be done. Man, I think George actually finished in 4 minutes. So this is George in 4 minutes. Let's check Shaq at the 5 minute mark here. How does the drip trays look? That's how much is in the Shaq drip tray. Not very impressive. How about the George drip tray? Oh yeah, look at that. Wow, huge difference. First up, Shaq. The Shaq burger, not too bad. George. The Shaq burger is thicker than the George. The George has kind of a more of a grilled texture to it. The taste test is a lot closer than the visual test is. The Shaq burger is slightly juicier, maybe because the George Foreman is so efficient at getting rid of the grease. George a little drier. They kind of both have pros and cons. Taste-wise, I think it's a draw. So if you take a look at the results of round one, Shaq's were actually a little bit juicier, although George's had those nice grill marks and cooked faster. George's were a little bit flattened and dry, but taste-wise, they were pretty close. I should point out that I did repeat the test a second time. I used the Shaq grill a little bit hotter and a little bit longer the second time, and the results were pretty much the same. Something else that stood out to me also is that the Shaq grill has an auto shut-off while the Foreman doesn't. The Foreman handle also gets hot, but the Shaq's doesn't. So to me, Shaq wins round number one, but we have 2 more rounds to go, and round number 2 is something that's kind of a feature for the Shaq grill, although Foreman does show it being used for that as well, and that's for grilling sandwiches. Now Shaq's is clearly advertised as a panini press as well, but the Foreman does show sandwiches made in there, but it's not real clear if you're supposed to use the grill lid up or down. I tried it both ways and one was much better than the other. Check it out. All right, these have been clean, it's been cool. I'm gonna try something very basic and see how it works with a basic grilled cheese sandwich. The closest I could find on the recipe guide was Shaq has some paninis. It says 350. I'll use 350 for the temperature. I'll have to just keep checking on it because grilled cheese goes pretty quick. So we've got the Shaq preheating at 350. I'm not sure about the 4 minutes. I just put a time in there. We've got the Foreman preheating for 350. We shall see how it goes. All right, Shaq is ready to go. All right, there we go, Shaq. Ooh. That could get ugly. That could get ugly. All right, Shaq's at 4 minutes. Let's see. Oh, that looks nice. I'm gonna take it out of there. All right, that looks actually quite nice. Nicely toasted. There we go. Oh no! Whoa! I think this may be not a good choice for the George Foreman grill. Wow. So yeah, the Shaq did a fine job on its sandwich, but the Foreman clearly isn't designed to make sandwiches with the lid closed. But you can make sandwiches on the Foreman grill. You have to just leave the lid up and flip it manually. All right, George Foreman, take 2 of round 2. Shaq's gonna sit this one out on the sidelines. We're gonna try without closing the grill. I knew that was gonna be a disaster, but I wanna try anyways. But let's see what happens when we don't close it and just do it like an old school grill. Let's flip it and see how it looks. All right, we have nice grill marks on this. And we're over 7 minutes, so definitely much longer. I guess I could have cranked the heat up higher. It's working, it's just a much slower process without using the full features of the Foreman grill. All right, we're at the 8-minute mark. Let's see what we got here. It looks pretty nice. It just took way longer than the Shaq did because you can't close the lid because it's gonna smash it. I guess I could have cranked the heat up a little bit higher, but you know, it's a little trial and error, but I still think the Shaq wins the grilled cheese test. So even though the sandwich came out fine the second time on the Foreman grill, the fact that it took twice as long still means the Shaq wins round number 2. So round 2 kind of favored the Shaq grill because the Shaq grill is actually a press. But round 3, I want to do something that the Foreman grill is good at, and that's doing thicker meat. So I had some thick chicken breasts, and here's what happened. Now George says the chicken breast is supposed to be 425 for about 4 to 8 minutes. That's for a 4-ounce chicken breast. Surprisingly, Shaq's chart doesn't even have chicken breasts on there. It has other kinds of chicken. But there is a recipe for chicken breasts, which says 375, so it's a little bit different as far as the temperature goes. I'm just gonna set them, each one of these to their corresponding recipes and see how they go. George, 425. It doesn't go any higher than 425 either. Shaq's gonna go to 375. They're both preheating. I set the Shaq to 8 minutes. I'm not sure how long it's gonna need as I put on the high end of the range. George has no timer, so I'm just gonna time it myself. Got a couple of pretty good sized chicken breasts here. Now the Shaq grill is not supposed to handle anything over 2 inches. I don't think this is 2 inches, but it's pretty thick. This could give an advantage to George. We shall see. Beautiful sizzle. All right, George is off. The form of the grill is interesting because the chicken breast is a little bit taller on one side than the other, and you can see how it actually contours the shape of it. Shaq a little bit to that effect, but George more so. All right, the Shaq is done. Well, I think it's done. Let's see. Let's see George after 8 minutes. I would say George looks more done than Shaq, but let me take the temperature here. Yeah, Shaq's not done. I think George has a little more to go too. George is more done than Shaq, but neither one of them's done. Also keep in mind that Shaq has a lower temperature as called for the instructions. I'm just following the Shaq instructions. I think if it was 425 like George, it'd probably be close to as done as George is. All right, George is done. I think Shaq's about done too. Here's what we got. Shaq on the left, George on the right. Shaq over here, George over here. Keep in mind though, the Shaq was at a lower temperature, so it might have been actually as fast as George if the temperature had been different. So I ran through the second round once more, and this time I did the Shaq grill bumped up to 425, and this time the results were actually quite similar. All right, take 2 also went quite well. What's interesting is that over here is the Shaq upper grill versus the Shaq bottom grill. Looks like the Shaq bottom grill chars better. George the opposite. Upper grill seems to char better than the lower. I think really that's pretty close. They both went 8 minutes, about the same. Couple different pieces of chicken, couple different tests, same results. So I think they're pretty close as far as the chicken goes. Let's taste the Shaq now. Juicy. Next up is George. Very similar. The chicken from the George Foreman grill is definitely juicier than the hamburger from the George Foreman grill. Shaq in both cases were pretty juicy. So I felt like round 3 was pretty close. I think either one really could win this one. The Shaq grill seemed to be more even as far as the grill marks in the top versus the bottom. The Foreman, the grill marks are a little different between the two of those. The Foreman seems a little hotter and faster, so I would say this round's probably a tie. You could make a case for Foreman winning round 3, but either way you look at it, Shaq won 2 out of the 3 rounds. So to me, Shaq wins the competition of Shaq versus George. A timeout real quick before I continue. I can't talk about George and Shaq without mentioning a few of my favorite moments from each one of them. So I'll quickly talk about my favorite funny moments and my favorite competitive moments for each George and Shaq careers. I would say my favorite competitive moment for George Foreman, now I think him as more of a 70s boxer, that's when in his heyday, but he had a comeback in the 90s. He came back, an unranked boxer, he was losing the fight, knocked out Michael Moorer to become the oldest heavyweight champion of all time. That was a great moment for George Foreman. My favorite funny moment of his was 20 years earlier, back in '74. For some reason, he chose to fight 5 guys in one night. In between the fights, he was arguing with Muhammad Ali, who was heckling him from the crowd. There were brawls in between some of the fights. The fans were booing him and throwing stuff. It was a bizarre night. It's worth watching. There's a video of that I'll link below if you want to check it out. Now, my favorite Shaq competitive moment was probably the 2000 Western Conference Finals, that alley-oop that he took from Kobe. His reaction is one of the most iconic moments of his career. I was watching that live. It was a great moment. Now, I think my favorite funny Shaq moment was a disrespectful dunk on Chris Dudley. I think it was 1999. Not only was a dunk disrespectful, but he gave him a shove afterwards, and Dudley went crazy and threw a ball at him. Apparently Shaq said he was just trying to get the guy off me. He wasn't trying to disrespect him. So it's a funny moment. If you haven't seen it, I'll link that below as well. But thank you to George Foreman and Shaq for so many great moments in your careers. Now back to the conclusion of this video. So I do think both grills are actually quite good, but the Shaq has several features that I happen to like. The auto shutoff feature, the LED display, the fan, the floating grill that can kind of double as a press, and also the stay cool handle. The Foreman has about the same or less amount of smoke even without a fan. It does seem to grill pretty fast and pretty hot. The Foreman's also easier to adjust the temperature. It doesn't go as high, and it also doesn't have an auto shutoff. So even though I think Shaq won this one, I do think Foreman's still a pretty good choice. I should point out there's a bunch of George Foreman grills out there. I could have compared any of them to the Shaq. I chose this one for 3 reasons. 1, they're both smokeless indoor grills. Number 2, they're the exact same price. And number 3, they were on the shelf right next to each other on Target. So to me, it looks like they're trying to compare the two of them even on the shelves. So this is my first time trying one of the Shaq appliances. I'm actually pretty happy with it. Now George has been around for a couple decades. He's got a lot of great grills out there, so this is just one test. But if you've tried any of these grills, tell me what you think in the comments below. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time.